one of our biggest sources was this FBI compilement of research on school shooters, basically identifying what a school shooter is, profiling a school shooter, and kind of talking about how we prevent these things from happening, what we do in the aftermath. So at the beginning of this whole assessment, there's a letter from the Attorney General. We just thought it was really interesting. It explains really well the whole document. We're going to be using a lot throughout our presentation. And it just kind of does a really good job of explaining like the emotional side of school shootings. So youth violence has been one of the greatest single crime problems we face in this country. We have focused on this problem, working in partnership with state and local governments to develop prevention and enforcement programs that work. Youth who commit crimes of violence must be held accountable, and the punishment must be firm and fair and fit the crime. At the same time, we must do everything we can to prevent crime in the first place. We have shown that if communities, schools, governments, and other key players pull together to address the roots of violence, we can make America safer for our children. Communities around the country are proving that prevention and intervention strategies that help keep our young people out of trouble do work. It is therefore critical that we do all we can to identify young people who need our help and then get them the help they need. We must continue to search for those crucial behavioral and environmental indicators which suggest that a threat of school violence may be real. This is why this report, The School Shooter, a Threat Assessment Perspective, is so important. Although much research remains to be done, this report serves as a vital foundation. It presents a model procedure for threat assessment and intervention, including a chapter on key indicators that should be regarded as warning signs and evaluating threats. If we use this threat assessment model judiciously, and we must, because the risk of unfairly labeling and stigmatizing children is great, then we will be able to fight and win the war on true crimes. We will be in a position to help those children who show propensity for violence before they scar themselves and others forever. And we will be in a position to protect innocent school children before they become senseless victims. So now we're going to show you this video. This was actually sent to us by a student here at Mount Union. Her name is Liz. She went to Chardon High School and unfortunately was at the high school when the shooting in Chardon happened. So she sent us this video. It was made by the cheerleading squad at the time. So there's about a 6-minute clip of the video that explains kind of what the students went through, some of the coaches' reactions. So we thought it was really interesting, kind of another way to just show the very emotional side of this argument, just because though there's not a lot of research and statistics, it's a really emotional problem, and kind of like the Syrian refugee crisis is a big thing going on in our country right now, and no one really knows what to do about it.
Attention Chardon Rescue. We have an active shooter at the high school. Repeat, active gunshots at the high school.
February 27th,
I won't forget that date.
I was sitting in my classroom. I was in Mr. Ritchie's room.
There was a big commotion out in the hallway. We saw like a mob of kids go running by.
I was right by our door, and I heard a really loud snap and people screaming.
And Mr. Ritchie ran to the door and looked back, and seriously just looked like he had seen a ghost. We had no clue. My teacher came running in, like screaming. She slammed the door and told us to all get in the corner. I had an employee come running in, and she's like, "There's been a shooting at Chardon." And I remember I froze.
I had gotten a text from one of my coworkers. There was a shooting at Chardon High School.
Didn't believe it.
And I didn't know what was going on. My teacher immediately shut the door and told us to go in the corner.
And that's when we started hearing like the shots on the lockers. Our principal came on the PA system and said, "We're in lockdown." Turn on the news. Nothing on the news. And I remember sitting there. I was the only one that had my phone in my pocket. And I started instantly texting my girls.
I'm texting like wildfire. Tell me you're okay. Please tell me you're okay. And he walked out of our room, and there was a victim laying on the ground, and he had to pull him into our room. And after a while, we figured out that the person on the floor was really hurt.
He was really like cold and stuff, so we were all trying to get sweatshirts to make him warmer. And just, we were all like working on adrenaline, just really focusing on trying to help, because we still like we're
anybody else was hurt or okay.
My phone rang, and it was actually Coach Missy, who coaches with me. And she said to me, she said, "Oh my God, did you hear?"
And I saw what was going on, but I was the only one in that little corner that knew. So I'm sitting there crying. Nobody knew what's going on. I didn't have the heart to tell everyone.
And in the midst of all this, my sister had texted my cousin to see if he was okay.
I think about 5 minutes went by, and I received a text from one girl. And the guy, my best friend, was staying with me because I almost fell. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm not." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Because this is Missy's cousin." And she said, "You just talked to her." I said, "Oh." She said, "She doesn't know." And I said, "No." And she said, "You need to call her." And I remember looking at her and I said, "How do I tell somebody that their cousin's been shot?"
You know, as I'm getting back the text from the girl, she's like, "I'm not hearing anything."
Later that day, when the police came and opened the door and let us out, and then when we had to get escorted out, and there was like a SWAT team and all the police around and helicopters, I was really struck. I didn't really know what was going on. It was very scary.
I mean, there were hundreds of people in the streets. You know, you had police cars, you had the EMS, you had the fire trucks, you had all the local SWAT teams all over the place. You had all the helicopters. But it was still so quiet. Like you could hear a pin drop.
My sister got a phone call from my other cousin. Nick was shot. It was bad. And that was about all I knew about the shooting that day.
We had lost a few really great kids that day. It was hard to see how it affected like my friends.
It's really emotional. You saw tears, and then everybody, I felt like we all just needed to get together. On the way to the hospital, I remember my mom getting a phone call from my dad. And she just sat in her front seat, shook her head. And I looked at her and said, "How bad?" And she said, "Really bad." There were posters from Columbine High School, places in Texas, and they would bring, there was a little cowboy hat and cowboy boots, like sitting with flowers.
Since the incident on February 27th, the girls, as I said, have forever changed.
Ever since February 27th, there's been like a brotherhood and a sisterhood throughout everyone.
Our community definitely came together more.
We came together in a very strange way.
The atmosphere at the school is amazing.
Our school, we're all there for each other more.
In past years, we've never really had like pep rallies, and this year so far we've had 3.
And we'll get everybody together and we'll start saying like, "We are Chardon" and "Top Her Up."
The stuff that they do this year is completely different than in years past.
They stay so involved and connected to the community.
Not only did you know that everything was getting better, but you could see it.
They're so proud to be part of that. And it's with everything. It's not just when they're on the football field. It's when they're just together.
I think the student body as a whole, as well as the faculty, all came together to make the banner and the balloons for Nick to know that he was welcome. We wanted him back as much as he wanted to come back.
You know, the decorating of the school, normally it would just be done homecoming, and that would be it. I think every week the school's been decorated.
So one thing that we thought was really unique, most of you, I know, most of us probably from around this area, Chardon was pretty much the first, like, big school shooting we've had in a really long time. Obviously, Columbine was the biggest one to date, but after that, Chardon was pretty much the first one, and I know we all kind of know since then. It's kind of been like a snowball effect. And then another unique thing about the Chardon school was that the shooter actually survived. Most of these school shootings, the shooters either are shot by the police or the SWAT teams or commit suicide. And in this case, the shooter actually lived through the process, but he never gave a reasoning for a shooting. So I think it still kind of is really hard to deal with. And I think show that as much as this problem, we can look at it statistically, we can look at it with all these research and stuff, but it's more emotional than anything. And we think that's kind of the best way to look at what we're going to present to you guys.
Okay, so there's obviously mass shootings, but we thought we would put a definition on what exactly a school shooting is. So it says it's a form of mass shooting which involves a gun attack on an educational institution such as a school or university. And then also, according to the United States Secret Service, schools are deliberately selected as the location for the attack. So there's mass shootings and then there's school shootings, which is what we're going to talk about. So this graph right here shows in blue the United States and purple is 36 other combined countries. And you can see the United States has one less than those other 36 countries combined. So also the U.S. Mostly of their shootings were with guns, and if you compare that to China, which had the second greatest number of shootings, theirs all involved non-firearms. And then Germany with 3, and Finland with 2, and all the other countries either had 0 or 1. We also found another interesting statistic that Australia mass shooting of 1996, that was the biggest one they've ever had. 12 days after that, they put in strict gun laws, and they haven't had a massacre similar to that since.
The gun laws in Australia, they basically bought back like 600,000 guns, like semi-automatic weapons, pistols, everything from the people. And then they enacted all these gun laws that you had to like personally register for your own gun. When you bought a firearm, you had to give a reason, and they didn't count self-defense as a reason. You had to give like a specific reason why you wanted that gun at the time. And there's another one I can't remember right off the top of my head, but they haven't seen anything like that since. We weren't sure if anything like that would ever really work here in the U.S. because people are so very like passionate about gun laws and the right to bear arms. But we just thought it was really interesting that they, in 12 days after that attack, they acted so fast and they haven't had anything happen like that since.
So, Dr. Salvatore gave us an article in the Reader's Digest, and they kind of described mass shootings and school shootings like terrorism. They are meant to terrorize. And then they had an interesting stat that since 9/11, 20 lethal terrorist attacks resulting in deaths of 46 people versus 346 mass shootings where have 4 or more killed since 1999. So there are more people killed from school shootings than there are terrorist attacks in the United States. So nearly 1,700 people have died and many more have been wounded.
Okay, and from that article from the FBI that Kelsey talked about in the beginning, we found 4 prongs that identify a shooter. The list is certain types of behavior, personality traits, and circumstances in a family, school, and community environment that should be regarded as warning signs. Then it said that if they were high or low on the scale, there was a lot of different lists for each one, but if they appeared high or low on the scale, then they were seen as a threat to the school. The 4 prongs, the first one is personality, and the big thing about that one was leakage, and said that was when a student intentionally or unintentionally reveals clues to feelings, thoughts, fantasies, attitudes, or intentions that may signal an impending violent act. And they said that was kind of like a cry for help coming from the student. And then the other big characteristics were low tolerance for frustration or anger management problems, a failed love relationship, lack of empathy, and they seek to manipulate others. The second prong was family dynamics, and then the most important ones out of that one were turbulent parent-child relationship, acceptance of pathological behavior from the parents, so things that other parents would see as abnormal behavior, the parents just let it go, access to weapons, and lack of intimacy. The third prong was school dynamics. It was the students' detachment from school. The tolerance for disrespectful behavior. So the school does little to prevent or punish the behavior from the student. A code of silence. It was like this other students, if they think that another student is a threat or might be thinking about doing something, they don't trust their teachers or administration enough to bring it to their attention. And they peg order among other students. The 4th prong was social dynamics. That one was
I don't think it is possible to definitively say this could or could not have been prevented. It is known that TJ came from a troubled home with parents in and out of legal trouble. His grandparents were raising him at the time of the shooting. My final thought on could this have been prevented is this. It is vitally important to check in on the people you interact with every day and let them know they are important, they are loved, and that their lives have worth. TJ never gave a reason for his actions, so it is not accurate to say that bullying was involved, but one has to infer that his self-esteem, self-worth, and mental health had to have been in a compromised state for him to carry out these actions. I think that these actions could have been prevented if someone had just taken the time to pay a little more attention to him. I think that's what preventing school shootings and other tragedies boils down to. Taking the time to check on those around you and make sure every person feels loved, supported, and that their lives are important. So that being said, we found 3 of the key causes for school shootings. The first one was revenge or retaliation, and that was usually for bullying. So a student was getting back at one of their peers who continuously bullied them. The mental health, that was like schizophrenia or depression, and media influence. Like I said earlier, most of them don't have really anyone paying attention to what they're watching on TV or what they're researching on the internet. So those are just the 3 key causes.
So going off that, try to kind of expand on that and how to deal with it. Since those are the key causes of what we found, we're going to try to assess those things and then try to also come to a solution. So with the first being preventing bullying, there's actually a government website, stopbullying.gov, that covers all of this stuff. And so I went through that website and tried to kind of accumulate a bunch of different things and come up with my own list. So here's what I had come up with: assess. So first, to come together as a school, this is within a school, is to come together and assess the current situation. So you look at the current bullying situation, become aware of who's doing the bullying, to who, how that affects the students, around them. Are they encouraging it? Also, just assessing how you handle it in the school currently. Also, taking it from that point and engaging the parents. Like Amanda had mentioned, is that TJ, they knew that he had a troubled home life, and so they knew that if maybe somebody would have intervened and engaged the parents, or actually engaged TJ face to face, is that maybe, like Liz said, is that we can't say for certain it could have been stopped, but maybe it could have been if somebody would have engaged the student or the parents. And also going further from that, create and enforce policies, which means basically intervene immediately. It says in that government website to not just sit back and let it happen, to intervene immediately, reassure those involved and the bystanders, and also to model respectful behavior to make sure that everybody's understands that they feel welcome, feel respected, feel cared for. Also building a safe environment, that kind of goes without saying. And then educating students and staff about bullying, about warning signs of bullying, about the causes and the effects of bullying. And then going off that, the second issue, mental illness. This becomes a really, really touchy subject of how to handle it, how to identify it. So first is that a lot of people say, okay, well, turn that over to the teachers and let the teachers handle how to deal with that. Well, that becomes a really heavy burden, as you guys talked about with dealing with different disabilities. Is that's a lot for a single teacher to take on. And so maybe the primary role of a teacher shouldn't be, or the primary responsibility of treating it, but maybe just identifying it. So maybe that's something that we train teachers and other school staff members to identify it, to then turn it over to somebody else who's more qualified in that area. But early identification is key, because what you see with the ones who suffer from mental illness who commit these crimes is that it's been a reoccurring theme over and over, and that there has been warning signs. So if you can identify it early, it's really, really key. And again, like I said, to turn it over to the school psychiatrists who can treat that mental illness, who are qualified to treat that, as well as, and I think that we will see an increase in intervention specialists, people who are professionally focusing on this, coming in and being professionally sound in how to deal with these situations and deal with students who have mental illnesses. then also limiting media influence. This is something that really intrigues myself personally. Amanda said it towards the tail end of what she was saying is that, and it says this last bullet, the contagion effect. What happens is that you see a lot, and it goes for a lot of different things in the media with school shootings, but it also goes with suicides. If you look at when the media reports on a very highly known celebrity who commits a suicide, with that following 2 weeks, you see a spike in suicides, and it's the same thing with school shootings. To the extent of what the media talks about, if they focus on the shooter, if they focus on the statistics, the comparing them to what other shootings happen, what you see is that, and with Chardon, especially with Columbine and all these different things, that you see a spike after that happens because the people who are thinking about these things, the people who are feeling troubled and might be thinking about doing those things, when they see that, that's almost like their encouragement to go do it and to go to get on the media as well for themselves. So little I guess tips, if you will, for the media is to avoid talking about the shooter, avoid talking about their characteristics, how they did it, the numbers, if you will. Avoid talking about that and actually focus on the victims and how it negatively affected the area, focus on the rebuilding, all that kind of thing. Refrain from comparing, again I said that, comparing the statistics to other shootings. But what you really run into right here is a big issue, and you think that if that solution is so cut and dry that we would do that. So legislation has been proposed before, but it's really sticky, is that the idea of free speech. And so if you start limiting what the media can and can't report on, then where do you stop, and at what point, So a lot of media is pushing back on that, but it has been a general consensus within the media as a whole that in the past 10 years or so that they are making a general movement to avoid talking about the shooter, avoid talking about these things that has shown to increase school shootings. Fox News and CNN, two different shows have vowed to not talk about certain things about school shootings. And so there is a uphill battle, but it's still progressing. With that being said, and then Kelsey's going to talk a little bit more about how we're going to prevent these school shootings. But with what Liz had sent us, we were asked the question, what has your school done since then to prepare for possible future shootings? Whether that be action plans, drills, assemblies, whatever it may be. And what she kind of gave us is 3 different things. The first being that now Chardon has a full-time resource officer on site. And what, for those of you who don't know what an RSO is, it's a actual sheriff who is responsible and whose job it is to be at school, whether it's every day or certain days of the week. And so what that does is that provides an actual law enforcement officer on site that if it would discourage somebody from coming in and shooting. But it also does allow that if something would happen, there'd be an immediate responder right there with a counter weapon who could take down that possible shooter. The second thing is that the school faculty, like I mentioned before, the school faculty has really been trained and has a lot of different things that they're doing with faculty to kind of educate them and just to go about that early warning signs, to try to identify potential shooters or potential acts of violence. And then third is that the area rescue teams, the police, the fire department, SWAT teams, everything like that has been highly trained. They do drills constantly to make sure that if something does happen, that they can respond in a timely manner.
So after all that, we kind of started thinking about what is our follow-up, what do we think we can do. So before we talked about personally what we thought the follow-up should be, we wanted to look and see what the current regulations were, if there were any laws, kind of what they said. So I listed a few here. I'm just going to kind of go through them. The Gun-Free School Zone Act of 1990 prohibits any person from knowingly possessing a firearm that has moved in or otherwise affects interstate or foreign commerce at a place that the individual knows or has reasonable cause to believe is a school zone. So basically, you can't have a gun anywhere. It's a school zone. It's easy to say that, but it's kind of hard to enforce that. People with concealed carries, permits, things like that. So the next one that kind of branched off of that was the Gun-Free Schools Act of 1994, which made it a crime for anyone to bring a firearm close to a school district. Congress claimed they have the authority to do this because school violence affected interstate commerce, but the Supreme Court actually disagreed and then struck down the law. So then after that, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which kind of snowballed into the No Child Left Behind Act, made a zero tolerance policy on weapons. If you receive received federal funding, you had to have a zero tolerance policy on weapons at your school, so that kind of cut down a lot, which we thought could be kind of counteract to, like Matt said, having a resource officer at the school with a gun. We didn't really look into like that would be an exception, but there could be problems with that. Like we later on we kind of talked about maybe having a designated person if you don't have a resource officer, maybe someone in the administration to be able to be trained with a weapon and have a weapon on the premises if something would happen. That would then go against that No Child Left Behind Act, the zero tolerance policy. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is the Federal Action for School Safety and Emergency Management. This was actually executive orders that Obama enacted in 2013 after we had had so many shootings and he just had gotten to the point where he was just like fed up. And his plan included closing background check loopholes to keep guns out of dangerous hands, banning military-style assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and taking other common sense steps to reduce gun violence, making schools safer, and increasing access to mental health awareness. So this one, it didn't really do much. It was really good for him to kind of throw it out there and say, this is what we want to do. But overall, it didn't really do much. It was just kind of like, this is what we should be doing, but nothing ever really happened with it. So from there, we're just kind of looking to see what we can do. And then I kind of looked into different state plans and what the different states, because every state obviously has different policies. So a lot of the schools have safety plans that include requirements for various safety drills, including fire drills, tornado drills, and active shooter drills, procedures for distribution for school safety plans and or confidentiality of such plans, the role for community and family involvement in the creation of those plans, involvement of state departments of education and specific school safety entities in the development and implementation of the plans, general school building and infrastructure requirements for school safety, and then grants and other funding opportunities available to support school safety planning. This is actually from the Justice Center, which is the Council of the State Governments. So they're kind of actively trying to get like a really good infrastructure in place in state governments and local schools to kind of have them combat it specifically to their own school, because every school is different, every school district is different. So that's kind of a good thing that's getting enacted and got the ball rolling. And then I thought it was interesting that specifically in Ohio, it is required that the Board of Education or each city or other governing school authority adopt a comprehensive school safety plan for each school in consultation with law enforcement, parents, and school employees. The plan should take into consideration and address any environmental or operational hazards specific to each school. Additionally, the plan must address both threats to school safety and emergency responses, including outlining all responsibilities and procedures. So Ohio actually has their own, each state, they kind of vary and they kind of all are along the same lines. You have to have a safety plan. Everybody has to be aware that you have to have certain procedures. But as of right now, there's nothing specific. It's just kind of like a general, you have to have like tornado drills, fire drills, safety drills, stuff like that. So our proposals, the first thing we recommended is definitely doing additional research into the profile of a shooter and the shooter's home life. Amanda talked about this a lot. One of the biggest causes of school shootings and why these students act the way they do is their home life or their behaviors or things like that. So the more that we research these kids that actually carried out school shootings or who were prevented right before it happened, trying to figure out why they were doing it, what caused it, if it was something in their home life, if it was something in school. Just the more research we can do on that, the more we can find out and the better we can combat that. And then kind of how Matt talked about too, definitely a lot more training for staff and administration. We want to be able to teach these people what to do if someone comes in with a gun, how to recognize these behaviors, like Amanda said, the leakage of these students, these behaviors that they're exhibiting, things like that. So this goes back to that FBI document that we talked about. They mentioned creating internal teams in schools to find ways to encourage students to come forward in a confidential manner with information about threatening behavior. So like Amanda mentioned, the code of silence, where a lot of students don't want to be a snitch or they don't trust their school administration with this information. They don't think anyone's going to do anything. So if you can establish an internal team within the school that is that person to go to or that group of people to go to who that is their job. If something happens, if you see something, the students feel comfortable with those people. So maybe like the school psychologist or a few teachers who are really close with a lot of students, things like that, the students will really trust you and feel comfortable coming to you if they see a student exhibiting such behaviors. They also recommend student assistance programs in which concerned teachers would come together to discuss students who are having academic problems, behavioral problems, or problems at home. And this goes back to what Liz said, just checking in on people. I know it's like, we talked about this a lot, for teachers it's hard to look at every single student in depth, see what you're doing. But if someone just notices, hey, this kid used to be a really good student and now his grades are slipping, he's withdrawing in class, he's not talking to anybody, just check up in on him or her, see what's going on. Even just that little bit of reaching out and talking to that student could save so many people's lives if something could happen. They also recommend peer assistance groups that will encourage students to come forward with information about possible threatening behavior in other students and provide support to overcome self-doubts or guilty feelings about breaking the code of silence. So this goes back to what I talked about earlier, how letting the students feel safe and coming to the administration and saying, hey, this person started acting really weird, no one else is really noticing it, I'm a little bit worried. And feeling safe that they're not going to get retaliation from that, that the school's actually going to listen to them and act upon that. And lastly, to develop programs to help parents recognize when their child may be in emotional trouble or socially isolated or rejected, and help parents become more knowledgeable about where to get help and more willing to seek it. So like we had mentioned with TJ, his parents were in and out of legal trouble, he was living with his grandparents. So just kind of enacting programs that help the parents recognize, but that's another hard thing, that if your parents are very active in the student's life, then it's hard to get them active and wanting to care if they don't already.
So for assessment, overall, it's like the steering crisis. We're not going to see results overnight. But if these plans do work, we should see a decline in school shootings. More teachers can become educators, and the leaders and the instructors, they'll want to become educated to prevent these. And obviously, earlier